Parang hindi na sila natitinag sa contempt order eh. I think malalaman po nila ito and they will be flagged, no? Kung bakit magkaparehong pangalan and magkaiba yung signatures. Exactly the same spelling and exactly the same family name. Tama po ba? Very obvious, Mr. Chair, na hindi lang po si Mary Grace Piattos ang nakita po nating questionable. Nakikita din po natin na may mga acknowledgement receipts, Mr. Chair, na pare-pareho yung pangalan, na magkakaiba yung date, na magkakaiba yung kanilang pirma, Mr. Chair. Mukhang widespread po ang nangyaring pag-aabuso sa pondo po ng ating gobyerno, Mr. Chair, so far as the utilization of confidential funds. Is it just a coincidence that the same two offices heading by the same person submitting to you the same acknowledgement receipts can encounter two persons? How unlikely would that be? Two persons with the same name, bearing the same spelling, same last name, with the same first name. Posible po yan? Kung titingnan niyo po ba yan, Ms. Camora, yung sulat po ba dyan pagkapareho?
Hindi po.
I think it's very obvious, Mr. Chair, that the signatures, Mr. Chair, acknowledgement receipt submitted by the Office of the Vice President is quite different from the acknowledgement received by the Department of Education. No? Parehang pangalan, pero mukhang magkaiba.
Sobrang nakakagulat na balita. Grabe, attorney ng COA, nagsalita na. Ibinulgar na kung sino si Mary Grace Piattos at Kokoy Villamin. Nagsalita na sa confidential fund. Ayon sa nakalap nating impormasyon, ginisa ni Congressman Zia Alonto si Attorney Camora. Matapos sabihing peke ang mga ipinasang pirma, tumistigo ang abogado ng COA sa Congress. Tinanong kung si Mary Grace Piattos at Kokoy Villamin ay mag-ama, pinalitan lang ang pangalan. Mabubulgar na ang salarin, mabubulgar na sa confidential fund. Tara panoorin natin.
Parang hindi na sila natitinag sa contempt order eh. So we don't want to set this example that anybody who does not like to attend, hindi ko alam kung whatever reason, dahil ayaw lang nila sumagot sa committee na ito, ay gagamitin lang nila yung convenient reason na nagkakaroon sila ng travel order, Mr. Chair. Comsec, how many times did they send us their excuse letter that they are on official travel?
Your Honor, from the time a subpoena at testificandum was issued, so and successfully served from November 11 to today, since there's a standing contempt. For the first 4 hearings, they sent position papers stating points that why they are not attending, Your Honor. After that, travel orders na po, Your Honor.
It's really bothering, Mr. Chair, because tinanong ko nga, who really approves the travel order? And then it's obviously, Mr. Chair, that there's a deliberate attempt to really frustrate the proceedings and for this committee to really find out kung ano talaga itong mga allegations na kinakaharap nila ng opisina. Just to put that into record, Mr. My manifestation and my frustration as well, Mr. Chair.
The Chair would like to recognize the first interpolator, Congressman Zia Alonto Adyong.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. Magandang umaga po sa ating lahat. Mr. Chair, I'd like to take off from the previous discussions that we had last November 5, Mr. Chair, where the committee has already established a numerous acknowledgement receipts from the Office of the Vice President as well as from the Department of Education. Various of these acknowledgement receipts bearing no names and only signatures, Mr. Chair. Now, we have already established that in the last committee hearing. There were even acknowledgement receipts, Mr. Chair, with names that repeatedly, hindi lang 2 beses, even thrice, 3 beses pong nag-a-appear sa ito sa mga sets of acknowledgement receipts. May mga acknowledgement receipts din, Mr. Chair, na pare-pareho ang pagkasulat. At yung iba pare-pareho yung tinta ng kanilang ballpen na ginamit, na there have been numerous other observations, Mr. Chair, which lead this committee and at least this representation to believe na meron talagang questionable yung processes at mukhang gawa-gawa, no? Yung tong mga acknowledgement receipts na ito, Mr. Chair. So since then, since we started discussing about the acknowledgement receipt, Mr. Chair, there were numerous inquiries from the public asking me kung how important is this acknowledgement receipts are. So, pag-usapan po natin yon, and I think this is part of my manifestation before I go on proceed with my questions, Mr. Chair. Ang mga acknowledgement receipts na po ito ay isinumite ng Office of the Vice President at the Department of Education bilang documentary evidence of payment for the supposed expenses using confidential funds, Mr. Chair. For the record, and to answer the public, Mr. Chair, yung buong kabuuan po ng confidential funds ng Office of the Vice President, totaling 500 million pesos, as well as the confidential funds of the Department of Education, totaling 112.5 million. These amounts were liquidated, Mr. Chair, solely through the acknowledgement receipts. Totaling with a grand total of 612.5 million of these public funds utilized na ginamit na ang binigay lang sa COA as a justification for the utilization of these confidential funds ay yung acknowledgement receipts na marami ho tayong nakita in the previous hearings na medyo questionable. Yung iba ay to a point na nakakatawa, Mr. Chair. And I would just like to cite an example, and let me go back to the previous, again, acknowledgement receipt that was first observed by Chairman Romy Acop. How many acknowledgement receipts are we talking here, Mr. Chair? No? Based on my office count, there are almost 4,500 acknowledgement receipts na nanggaling po, in total, no? Both nanggaling po sa Office of the Vice President, pati rin po galing po dun sa Department of Education when the Vice President concurrently holding the office as Secretary. Roughly 4,500, 2,670 from the Office of the Vice President submitted acknowledgement receipts, and 1,820 with no invoices, zero official receipts, no? Lahat po ito acknowledgement receipts na walang attachment of proof of identity, no? Or the existence man lang na yung supposed recipients nito ay buhay or totoong tao. So this is what we find out during the previous committee hearings, and this is what I think the observation of this representation would like to find out. May I, again, let me go back to the previous discussion that we had at nagkaroon din ito ng national traction. May I request COMSEC to please flash the first acknowledgement receipt that was noticed by Chairman Acop. Ayan po, Mr. Chair. Yung Mary Grace Piattos, no? Isa po yan sa mga acknowledgement receipt na naisumite sa Commission on COA, Commission on Audit, na alam naman po natin na yung pangalan na Mary Grace ay isang restaurant, yung Piattos ay isang chichirya. No, if you ask me, medyo questionable kung meron pa ho talagang taong nagngangalang Mary Grace Piattos. Now, we could not find out whether this Mary Grace Piattos is indeed a person or alive because there's no corroborate attachment to it other than the acknowledgement receipt na receive natin, ang pirmado niya. So, Mr. Chair, this prompted, Mr. Chair, in fact, some of the members here and guest members who came out with a, yung pabuya na kung sino man ang makakapagturo, Mr. Chair, sa taong ito na buhay, we are willing to provide 1 million pesos as a reward for anybody who can point to us whether this Mary Grace Piattos is indeed a person and if she is really around, alive, no, Mr. Chair. Also, as Mr. Chair, another observation that I want to ask, I think it was also already mentioned during the previous hearings that there are names appearing in both the acknowledgement receipts from the OVP and as well as from the Department of Education. Pero may isang pangalan na nag-stand out sa akin among all the acknowledgement receipts na sinumite nila. So, Mr. Chair, just to maintain the confidentiality of the activities, assuming there were any such activities, Mr. Chair, I would just like to just show to you the signature of this particular acknowledgement receipt which I noticed, Mr. Chair. No? May I request our ComSec to flash the second? Yan po. Ito po yung acknowledgement receipt. Galing po yan sa Office of the Vice President. Yung set po na sinubmit. Gusto ko lang pong tanungin ang ating COA. Mr. Chair, is Ms. Camora present?
May we know if
Here?
representative from COA is present? Attorney Camora. Saan? Yes, Attorney Camora is present.
Attorney? Comsec, can you please flash the... You have already taken your oath, man, no? Kasi several times ka naman umattend, no, Attorney Camora. Tama po ba? Yes. Can you... Yeah,
Attorney
please.
Camora, please answer.
Yes po, Mr. Chair.
Nakita niyo naman po itong ano, no? Acknowledgement receipt, no?
Yes po, Mr. Chair.
Sa palagay niyo, nababasa niyo po ba yan, yung pangalan dyan?
It's, I think, Kokoy Villamin po.
Yeah, Kokoy Villamin received on, ano ba yan, 9, no?
September 17.
17, 2023, no? So, itabi lang po natin yan for the meantime. And I'd like also to show you another acknowledgement receipt, this time from the Department of Education. Mr. Chair, can I ask ComSec to, yes. On the left side, with black ink, that's from the OVP. On the other side is from DepEd. Okay, pakibasa po yan, yung pangalan din po dyan sa DepEd.
Parang parehas po, Mr. Chair, Kokoy Villamin.
Parehas po, no?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Oo. So, ibig sabihin, the point I'm trying to drive at, Mr. Chair, is that based on the documents and the acknowledgement receipts, which we do not have any other ways to really affirm whether these persons and individuals who have received the confidential funds were truly alive and truly person, makikita po natin yung medyo hindi ho kapani-paniwala ako, ordinaryo po ako na tao, I'm not an auditor, but as you can see it, pareho po yung pangalan nila, Kokoy Villamin, yung acknowledgement receipt from the Office of the Vice President, and at the same time, from the DepEd, the same person, Kokoy Villamin, from Osamis. No? Sa palagay niyo po ba yan? Kung titingnan po natin, Mr. Chair, sa palagay natin, common ba yung pangalan na, Mr. Chair, Ms. Camora, yung pangalan na Kokoy Villamin?
Mr. Chair, parang hindi po since hindi, para siyang nickname yung Kokoy po.
So, masasabi niyo po ba as a head or nag-audit ng Intelligence and Confidential Funds, Audit Office, masasabi niyo po ba na isang person yan?
Pwede po, Mr. Chair.
Pwede?
Pwede po.
Pwedeng isang person, no? Is it just a coincidence that the same two offices heading by the same person submitting to you the same acknowledgement receipts can encounter two persons? How unlikely would that be? Two persons with the same name, bearing the same spelling, same last name, with the same first name. Posible po ba yan?
Medyo likely less possible.
Yeah, I think
po.
it's highly unlikely, Mr. Chair, na yun po yung mangyayari, no? Kung titingnan niyo po ba yan, Ms. Camora, yung sulat po ba dyan pagkapareho?
Hindi po.
I think it's very obvious, Mr. Chair, that the signatures, Mr. Chair, on the one on the acknowledgement receipt submitted by the Office of the Vice President is quite different from the acknowledgement received by the Department of Education, no? Parehang pangalan pero mukhang magkaiba ang tinta. Mr. Chair, this is just one of the examples that we have received, no? From the office from the COA, no? Yung sinabit po nilang acknowledgement receipt, Mr. Chair. Now, is it true, Mr. Chair, that I'd like to ask Attorney Camora, is it true, Mr. Chair, na magkaiba po yung auditor dun sa OVP at saka the same sa Department of Education?
Parang that time po,
Yung resident auditor po nila, magkaiba po, no?
yes po. Yung
magkaiba.
resident auditor,
Yes,
definitely magkaiba po.
Kasi kung isa po yung auditor nito, I think malalaman po nila ito and they will be flagged, no? Kung bakit magkaparehong pangalan and magkaiba yung signatures. Exactly the same spelling and exactly the same family name. Tama po ba?
Tama po, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. So I think, Mr. Chair, this is something that we should look into. The reason why I'm pointing this out, Mr. Chair, and for the public's information, ito po yung pinag-uusapan natin dito. Dahil unang-una po, with this kind of itong pag-aabuso sa ganitong proseso ng pag-audit na ibibigay lang po nila is acknowledgement receipts, it gives us so many, it provides us so many, and it opens up so many floodgates of questions, which I believe, yun yung pinaka-importante po na masagot. Dahil these are public funds utilized, and these are funds na readily available for their request. Tapos ganito yung nakikita nating mga reports nila at saka yung pag-acknowledge ng kanilang pag-utilize ng kanilang pondo. It's very obvious, Mr. Chair, na hindi lang po si Mary Grace Piattos ang nakita po nating questionable. Nakikita din po natin na may mga acknowledgement receipts, Mr. Chair, na pare-pareho yung pangalan, na magkakaiba yung date, na magkakaiba yung kanilang pirma, Mr. Chair. So it begs the question now, how do we be able to supply answers to this question? But even if we ask COA here, mayroon bang attachment na sinubmit sa inyo to verify whether this was given as a way to purchase information, or is it a reward payment for an information that is relevant to the activity of the Office of the Vice President or the DepEd in relation to confidential funds? Kasi magkaiba po yan eh.
Mr. Chair, acknowledgement receipts po ang sinubmit nila, and
Acknowledgement receipt po, ano po yan? That's the payment for information, purchase of information, or
both
yung
po,
reward?
Both po, Mr. Chair, acknowledgement receipts ang sinubmit nila for both information and rewards. It's just that sa rewards po, may additional requirement lang po kaming hiningi.
Yeah, but unfortunately, some of these acknowledgement receipts were not supported by a certificate of success. Hindi ho ba? Kasi magkaiba po yan, Mr. Chair. Pag yung purchase of information, regardless whether this information are useful or not, talagang bibilin mo lang yan. Diba? But the reward and payment for the information, dapat po yan may certificate of success. Hindi ho ba? Dun sa agencies po na pinagpartneran, for example, ng inyong opisina. Tama po ba yun, Attorney Camora?
Tama po, Mr. Chair.
And all of these acknowledgements receipts were being supported by the certificate of success?
Mr. Chair, yung sa rewards lang po.
Yeah, but on not all of this, in this particular case na sinat ko po sa inyo, are you familiar with this kind of acknowledgement receipts? Or have you came across this particular questionable acknowledgement receipts?
Yan po yung mga ni-review namin dati, although at that time, Mr. Chair, wala naman po sa namin na
That's why you have issued yung observation memorandum ninyo. It's precisely because they have failed to at least provide you the attachment to verify or at least to authenticate that indeed these funds that were used for a reward or payment of reward were not substantiated by a certificate of success. Tama po ba?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Again, Mr. Chair, it begs us the question, gaano kalala yung pag-aabuso dito sa confidential funds? I think we have just started unearthing all of these problems and all of the questionable acknowledgement receipts. I think this is just the tip of the iceberg, Mr. Chair. If we go deeper into this, mukhang widespread po ang nangyaring pag-aabuso sa pondo po ng ating gobyerno, Mr. Chair, insofar as the utilization of confidential funds is concerned on both the Department of Education and the Office of the Vice President. Hindi lang ho si Mary Grace, ang sabi ko nga po, hindi lang ho si Mary Grace Piattos po ang questionable dito. Meron din pong mga pangalan na pare-parehong nag-a-appear po on both acknowledgement receipts, Mr. Speaker, coming from the Office of the Vice President as well as from the Department of Education. Mr. Chair, just a manifestation, and I believe there are questions relating to this that my colleagues would also like to ask the COA. And I would yield to my colleagues to further inquire kung paano po ito nakalusot at saka ano po talaga yung nature ng pagbibigay ng acknowledgement receipts, which I believe, to my mind, Mr. Chair, is open to abuse, Mr. Chair. And yung process po ng pagganito kung ganito, if we allow this to continue on, talagang maabuso at prone talaga po sa mismanagement ng pondo ng binibigay po sa mga ahensya. Particularly, Mr. Chair, ito pong discussion natin ng utilization ng confidential funds ng Department of Education while the Vice President was still holding the agency as the Department Secretary. Marami pong salamat, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Attorney Camora.
Ngayon, ikaw bilang Pilipino, ano ang masasabi mo at reaksyon sa balitang ito? Mag-iwan ka ng komento sa ibaba at atin pong babasahin isa-isa.